guys, this is Camera Review for The Secret Life of Pets 2. And what The Secret Life of Pets 2 is essentially about is, once again, we center on the character of Max. He is, enjoying life with Duke and Katie, but Katie ends up getting married. They eventually have this son, Liam, who Max feels very overprotective of, and one day when Katie and all of them go to vacation on this farm, Max starts to find himself very overprotective, like I said, towards Liam, but he also runs into this dog named Rooster, who seems to want him, who teaches him to toughen up and things like that, and that's really all there is to say. So, Secret Life of Pets 2, I was understandably not excited for this film at all. It looked incredibly unnecessary, and especially after watching the first film, I really have no idea why this film had to happen, other than the fact that it made a lot of money, and Illumination just likes milking shit. I don't really understand why. That's always a problem I've had with Illumination, and it seemed like a problem I was going to have with this movie. I really just did not see what else you could really do here, and I have to say, did Secret Life of Pets 2 surprise me? No. In fact, if anything, this film is worse than the first one. There are a lot of things that I really don't like about this movie. I almost hate it. I don't hate it, but I almost do. It is honestly more mediocre than the first one, and we'll get into that right now, starting off with the cast. And look, I will say this, the cast is about as good as they were in the first movie. Everyone that was fine is fine here, but the one big change I actually did think worked this time around was the addition of Patton Oswalt. Patton Oswalt, of course, replaces Louis C.K., and I actually liked him more. Maybe it's because he's not played by Louis C.K., but I actually thought Patton Oswalt did a good job with this character. He's much more likable this time around. He's much less of an asshole, and I thought overall he definitely did a really good job here. I did like where they went with the character of Max. He actually does go through a pretty good arc in this movie, and I overall liked what Patton Oswalt did with the character. I honestly kind of wish that he voiced from the beginning, because I just liked him a lot more here this time around. The only other really big standout, though, this time is Harrison Ford as Rooster, who I actually thought was a pretty great addition. He comes in a little bit later into the film, but the bond that he forms with Max is pretty great. They thankfully did not go in a direction that I thought they were going to go with him, which I liked, and I thought overall Ford just did a really good job. And again, maybe it's because this character was played by Harrison Ford. That's why I enjoyed him as much as I did, but overall, I thought he worked very well here. I liked where he ended up going, and I thought overall he was a really nice addition to the cast. Everyone else is either fine or just straight up bad. The people like, say, Eric Stonestreet, like Bell, Jenny Slate are about as good as they were in the first one. Kevin Hart, of course, let's talk about him. Really hate him in the first one. Honestly, he's even worse here. He has more screen time in this movie, unfortunately. He has this, like, superhero sort of thing going on, and I couldn't stand him. Again, he's so over the top, he's so energetic, and I just did not like him at all in this movie. I really don't like this character. It's not just the character, it's Kevin Hart's performance that just really sours this character for me. Nick Kroll, I think, is also really over the top and bad. I was not really a fan of him at all. Also, I didn't mind him in the first movie, but Dana Carvey, I really did not like here. The character he was playing, I just did not like him in this movie very much at all. Again, the rest of the cast, not really much to say here in terms of voice performances. They're fine, I guess. But now let's get to the directing here, which it's kind of hard to talk about the directing in this movie, because that leads me to my biggest issue with this film, is that this doesn't really feel like a movie. It's not directed like one. It's certainly not written like one. And what I mean by that is that this feels much less like a movie and more of, and I don't know if this was the intent, but it definitely feels like a pilot for, say, one of those Netflix shows that are based off of animated film. Like, that Boss Baby one or the Trolls one that's on there. This very much feels like it's in that same vein. And because that, it's very hard to talk about the directing here, because in general, the film feels like it's lacking direction. The film feels like they had like 3 different ideas, and Renaud, I think, you know, he directed the first movie, and I think they did a good job of that, but I feel like for this sequel, they needed someone new. They needed someone to breathe life into this sequel, and they just didn't get that here. So because of that, the film feels like it is very much lacking. I will say, I did think he did a much better job with striking a balance between kid humor and adult humor. It definitely is not as mean-spirited as the first one was, for sure. But the humor here, I mean, it's still not very good. It's not very funny at all. There's really only one joke, and it's uttered by Harrison Ford, of course, that really made me laugh, and that's kind of it. So again, not really much to say about the directing. Most of my problems with this movie really are the writing. The writing here, again, it doesn't feel like a cohesive movie. At least the first movie did feel like one. It did feel like a cohesive movie. This, on the other hand, does not. It feels like two or three different movies, a la, like I said, a Netflix series. It very much does feel like one. The main plot, I will say, though, I actually did not dislike. I actually thought it wasn't too bad. This idea that you have Max and Duke, and Max is starting to feel very overprotective, and I thought they did do a good job of that. I like the stuff between him and Rooster, and the whole idea of Max sort of learning to toughen up and learning to, you know, yes, he can protect this kid, but at the same time, he needs to give this kid some boundaries. I thought actually was a pretty good plot. I liked where they ended up going with that. I like where Max ended up going as a character, and like I said, I liked him more this time around. If the whole movie was just that, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. But even at that, there still are some significant problems with that specific story, because yes, it is a good story for Max, but Max does not feel like the same character this time around. They have done a complete 180 with this character. In the first film, he was very smug. He was very self-centered in that way. He seemed to really care about nothing except his owner and Gidget, and that was kind of it. And here, he's settled into this whole other character. He's a lot more positive. He's a lot more happy. He's also a lot more, he's much more of a wimp than he was, I think, than he in the first movie for sure. And he's very hyperactive and things like that. And just, it doesn't feel like the same character. And I don't know if they were trying to show growth, but it didn't feel like growth to me. It felt like a complete redo of the character. And I understand they recasted the voice actor. I get that, but if you look at Max in the first movie and then Max in this movie, they just don't compare. Like, regardless of how I liked this character more, because I did, they don't feel like the same character at all. And I'm not going to pretend that they did anything in this film to make this character better, because it just wasn't the same character very much at all, and that just did not work here for me. But again, that plot line I didn't think was bad. I thought it was really the only sort of redeeming thing in this movie in terms of positives. But again, as I said, that's not the only thing going on in this movie, and everything else about this movie, I fucking hated. I thought the other two plots were really, really bad here. We have this side plot with Gidget, where she has this, like, this chew toy that Max is, has grown accustomed to, and he wants her to, like, watch it and things like that. This whole subplot felt like it could have just been one joke we cut back to every now and then. I don't know why this was a legit subplot in the movie. Where it ends up going is absolutely ridiculous. And look, I understand that this is supposed to be a really ridiculous sort of series. I get that for sure. And I will say the Toy Story comparisons are very much gone here, which I do appreciate, because I thought the franchise was way too much like Toy Story. This one isn't really like it at all. But the directions they take these characters in, they just don't make any sense. They are so implausible, and Gidget is the best example of that. Where she ends up going, I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it just feels so convenient. I don't like the way that was done, and I really don't understand why that plotline needed to be in here. It really just seemed like they had it so that she had something to do. But that's not even the worst one in the movie. The worst one, absolutely, is what they give Snowball. Snowball in the first movie, he was pretty much a villain. Here, it's the complete opposite. Here, he's like a full-on, like, superhero, and I hated every single second of it. Him being the superhero, he's trying to help out this tiger that's being, like, abused. They try to throw in this, like, animal cruelty message, and he has to rescue this tiger from this circus, and again, I understand the series is supposed to be silly, but when you venture out of the city, it's very hard to take it seriously. It's very hard to feel. There's a line of believability. There's a difference between completely ridiculous and just straight up non-believable. And everything we see involving Snowball and even Gidget subplots are just completely unbelievable. And I just could not buy into it. It didn't make sense for them to go here. And again, it's one of those things that it didn't feel like a movie. It didn't feel like it was part of this movie. It felt like it was part of a TV show, and it just did not work at all. And they try to make an effort, at least in the third act, to tie all of these plot lines together, but it fails miserably. I did not think any of these plot lines went together at all. I honestly was sitting there like, how is there any correlation here? I get it what they were trying to do, but it just did not work. It's just simply too different, and them trying to tie everything together, it just ultimately didn't work at all. So again, the writing here, it's hard to talk about because it feels like three different movies we have. One of them honestly isn't too bad, the one with Max and Duke. Even though Max, like I said, doesn't feel like the same character. The Gidget one just feels it's so out of place and didn't even really need to be there. And the Snowball one is easily the worst. It's just annoying and dumb, and every time we come back to it, I just absolutely hated it. So yeah, the writing, it's very confusing. There are things here that there were just too many things happening, honestly. There was too much happening. It seemed like one of those movies where they were throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, and it very much does seem that way for sure. So yeah, just the writing here doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And without spoiling anything, again, just where they end up going, it's just not believable, especially since these are supposed to be household pets. Remember that. That's the key story we have here. That is the key draw to this series, that this is supposed to be your household pets and what they do when you aren't around. And this movie, it doesn't feel like that's what's going on anymore. And there are moments where they will venture outside of the city, and there's no point where, like, their owners are looking for them or anything like that, and it just does not seem plausible. It would be like, I know, again, they're not trying to make it like Toy Story, but going back to Toy Story, let's say Woody and Buzz, were to go somewhere outside of his town. They go to, they go to, like, say, China for some reason, and Andy doesn't once consider looking for them. It just wouldn't make any sense, and that's very much what this movie is like. There are so many moments like that, and I was just shaking my head like, what are you doing? How does this make any sense? Does these writers not know their own series? Like, I just don't understand where they are going with this anymore, and it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. But even with all of those complaints, the animation is still really good here. It's very colorful. It definitely looks about as good as it did in the first film. I definitely really did appreciate it for sure. And I think they did a good job with that. It definitely, the animals feel very tangible, and I overall still really did love the animation here. And that's the one thing I will give it, is that that's the only thing that doesn't feel, obviously minus the voice cast, which, are all pretty much A-list actors. The animation does not look like a TV show. It still looks very good. It still looks about as good as it did in the first movie, and I will definitely give them that for sure. The score, Alexander Desplat, Alexander Desplat's score, I still really do appreciate, but they don't even use it that much here. It's very minimal, and I wanted more of it. Like, I really love that score in the first movie, but it really doesn't appear that much here at all, which was a little disappointing. And the editing, again, this movie is, I believe, shorter than the first movie, and it feels a lot longer than it is. Honestly, this movie's only an hour and 15 minutes without credits, but it felt like 2 hours. Like, I was surprised by how slow it really was, especially when we cut back to Snowball. When we cut to Max, the pacing feels considerably less slow, but when the other two plot lines are going on, I was just checking out of it. I was just not into it at all, and it's probably one of the slowest animated films that I have seen in a very long time. Overall, I nearly hated this. I can't say I straight up hate it because, again, admittedly, I did like one of the plot lines overall, but it just doesn't feel like a cohesive movie. Nothing that this film does feels like it gets us anywhere, minus the character of Max. That's the only character that feels like he has any development to him whatsoever. All the other characters, they're completely stagnant. They go absolutely nowhere. I shouldn't even, like, characters like Duke and Chloe, I didn't mention them because they don't go anywhere as characters. They don't do anything interesting with them besides what they did in the first movie. They still feel like very one-joke characters. Harrison Ford is a good addition. I did think he worked well in this movie, but this movie, it just doesn't feel like one. It feels, like I said, more of a pilot to a TV show. It doesn't feel like one cohesive movie, and overall, it doesn't really do much to justify its own existence. I really don't know why this movie had to be made. I don't really know why Illumination feels the need to just make needless sequels to every single movie. After a while, it gets very tiring, and I think after this film, it very much shows that this needs to end. They need to have some sort of plan if they want to survive as a studio. If they want to be able to sustain this studio, they need to find a better way, because people are going to get tired of it after a while. I know this movie probably is going to do really well because the first one did, but after a while, it's going to get tiring, and I think it very much does show here. So overall, I actually liked this less than the first one, but again, I can't say I hated it, but it definitely is probably one of the most unnecessary sequels that I have seen in a very long time, and I'm definitely going to give The Secret Life of Pets 2 overall a C-. Oh yeah, and just so you guys know, just like the first one, yes, there is a mid-credit scene, but I would advise you guys to, once you see credits, just leave. Just leave. If you want to keep your hearing intact, just leave. Trust me, you'll be better off that way. It involves Snowball. I thought that the movie was going to be over. I was like ready to walk out, but then I saw a scene happen, and I wish I had left. And that's all I'll say. But either way, guys, if you have seen The Secret Life of Pets 2, let me know what you guys thought of it. Would love to hear your thoughts. And of course, which one did you like more, this or the first one? What was your favorite Illumination movie? All that kind of stuff. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.
Moving on.